as of late, there's been a couple of interesting events for the more creative members of the FOSS world. Things like deciding on a new name for OpenSUSE Slow Roll, the Plasma 6 wallpaper competition, and a bit more recently, selecting the new face of OpenSUSE is underway, a competition to select new logos for the OpenSUSE project. As of a couple of days ago, the submission phase is over. That was between the 1st and the 22nd of November. The only thing left now is voting on the logos. And I say logos for a very good reason. It's not just a single logo being decided on. Whilst it is being advertised with the main project logo, there is a bunch of other things being selected. Specifically these 5 logos: the overall project logo, Caliper, Tumbleweed, Slow Roll, and Leap. And there is some logic with these specific logos. As for the overall project logo, the OpenSUSE community is considering a new, distinct OpenSUSE logo to represent the project, essentially a new chameleon-inspired design. This new logo should complement the brand identity of the OpenSUSE project with its distributions. The color green, this specific value, is reserved as the primary logo color for the project, but color suggestions for distribution logos are welcome. There have been discussions of a new OpenSUSE logo over the years, but the timing to transition to a new logo wasn't ideal until now. As OpenSUSE's logo is similar to SUSE's old logo and the project is experiencing a transitional period, now seems like a logical time to have the competition along with the 4 distribution logos. This should provide an opportunity to strengthen the visual identity of the OpenSUSE brand and make it discernible and cohesive with its other logos. If you look at the SUSE logo and the OpenSUSE logo side by side, they're basically the same thing. So, as for the OpenSUSE distributions, first up we have Tumbleweed, the rolling release OpenSUSE. The current Tumbleweed logo's wide shape and thin lines have caused visibility and recognition issues, which we aim to avoid with a new Tumbleweed logo. Now, when the logo is fairly large, it's not really that big of a deal, but if you want to use it as something like a favicon, for example, for like the page of Tumbleweed, you can't really tell what it is, because favicons are meant to be square, so if you want to use a wide logo in a square format, you have to make it smaller and smaller and smaller, have all of this wasted vertical room, and something like that already has thin lines basically becomes an absolute mess. And with the logo typically just being used in black, there's not really any color that is associated with it, where you see that color and then instantly think, oh, that is Tumbleweed, like you do when you think about the overall project. If you see this green, you think that is SUSE. As for Leap, the stable, slow-moving distribution often run on servers, the Leap logo doesn't have the same issues, but members of the community felt the option should be available to submit a new logo for Leap. This is the only one where there's not really any sound logic, but if you're going to be redesigning all of these other logos, maybe someone has a good idea that is going to inspire some of the other new ones. Next, we have Slow Roll. This release is a bit slower than Tumbleweed does, but a lot faster than Leap does. Think of it kind of like the Manjaro model, but actually run well. Now, Slow Roll, being such a new project, does not currently have a logo, and the Slow Roll logo should not directly mimic the Tumbleweed logo to maintain differentiation among the distributions from the same source. Whilst it should be different, a lot of the options available sort of take inspiration from what Tumbleweed is, and that makes a lot of sense because it's supposed to be a slower version of Tumbleweed. And lastly is Caliper. This takes the MicroOS project, adds KDE Plasma, and makes it a desktop distribution. This I also don't believe currently has a logo, and while Caliper has a close relationship with Aeon, their logos should be distinct. Gears and the letter K motifs are acceptable for Caliper, but it cannot directly use KDE trademarks, with Aeon being the GNOME equivalent of this project. If we go down to the bottom of the page, you'll start seeing the logos that are actually available. Now, you're also going to notice that there is a lot more categories than just the ones being voted on. Every single system has new logos available, and there is a good reason for that. MicroOS is not part of the vote, as stated in the rules above. The images below only provide context should a certain theme be selected in the vote. So this is just to provide a full context of, hey, if we choose a new logo, it kind of makes sense to redesign everything else as well. Otherwise, you just have this one logo that kind of just stands out. Now, I'll leave it down in the description, but here is the voting in question. Do keep in mind, the person doing the branding changes may have a say in any changes for any of the options available. The ultimate brand decision will rest with members of the project doing the implementation, having the final say in selecting the logos being implemented based on the results from this vote. Basically saying that this vote is non-binding. If something wins that they feel is going to damage the reputation or they feel is not going to be a good logo, then they're going to do something else. Maybe they go with the second one, maybe they, make something entirely new. This competition is just to give them ideas about the logo. But if something really good does happen to win, they probably will end up using it. The primary goal of this vote is to introduce a fresh and distinctive OpenSUSE logo that encapsulates the essence of the OpenSUSE project, a design inspired by the chameleon. So let's have a look. Now, rather than going over every single logo individually, because there is a lot of logos to go through, and this is just on the main logo, I think it's better to talk about them in a general sense, because a lot of the logos frankly, are very, very similar. Everything I say here is just my opinion. If you disagree with me, good for you. Your award is in the mail. With that being said, I think any of the logos that have really small text should probably just be skipped over. Like this one here, if you make this image any smaller, you are not going to be able to read that text. It is just going to look like a chameleon. This one here, the text is also a bit small. If the text was under it, I think that would be a bit different. This one here, you can't read the text as is. Like, small text is basically a no-go with any logo. If you're going to include text, it has to be big and clear. Otherwise, there's no point. And speaking of hard to read, we have these grey logos. There is a full set of them for every single distribution. And I like it as like a graphical concept. But I feel like the logo in the middle is really obstructed because of the lines. The text, once again, is very small and very hard to read. I get what you're trying to do, but this is not something I would personally vote for. I also don't like the ones that diverge a little bit too far from the established OpenSUSE brand. For example, this more realistic looking chameleon, or this one here. This one, I think, also kind of fits in the same camp as well. Like, it's hard to tell really what this is supposed to be. This other really realistic looking chameleon, or this Geico looking chameleon down the bottom here. When I first saw this, I thought it was supposed to be a gecko. It's not a bad logo. Like this is really well designed, but I don't think it fits with OpenSUSE. For the record, it's not badly designed, and whoever made this clearly has artistic talent. I just don't feel like it fits with the design of what OpenSUSE currently is. I think the safest option is one of these ones that kinda just looks like the current logo. Like this one, this one, this one, obviously this one here, this one in a sense as well. But if they want to diverge from the current OpenSUSE branding while still being inspired by it, the ones that I really like are these line art ones. Whether it be this one here, this one here, this one here. I feel like there are some ones up here as well. This one I also really like. This one here. I think the line art might be the best direction to go. Some of the line art ones, I feel like the lines are a bit too thin and will suffer from the same problem that Tumbleweed currently has. But these ones with the thicker lines, I think are really, really good. Which one I would say I like the most? That's a really tough one. I do like the simple chameleon head. That does work and gives you a lot of room to do the logos for each distribution, because you can change out what the eye is with other things available. And I'll show you in a bit, that's actually what's being done. As for the other ones, I don't know which one I like the most. Like, they're all really good. Moving on to Tumbleweed, you'll see what I mean about how you can modify those main logos into something that works for a distribution. Here are the chameleon head ones. These, I think, are really, really cool. I don't know which one I like the most. It feels like a toss-up between this one here and this one here. This is also really good as well. Like, it's really close for me. But there's a lot of options in here that aren't using that design. You have, say, this one here. This, I feel, is a little bit too simple. But you also have this one here and this one here. You also have another one of that grey one. Or you have this one here. Or you have a more angular design. These also work quite well as well. I feel like these ones suffer from the exact same option the current Tumbleweed logo has. So maybe they aren't the best, but this one here is kind of like the current Leap logo, just turned on its side. And it kind of looks like you're going really, really fast in a certain direction. At least without modification, the ones I would avoid doing are the ones that are still the same green as the main OpenSUSE logo. Like this one here, we have one further down here, this one right here. I think the design is fine, but if there was something like one of these blues, it would make a lot more sense. You don't want it to clash with the main OpenSUSE logo and have people confused about what it's supposed to be. And this one right here is a great example of how you use text. Maybe make the text here a little bit bolder on the open part, but this design, I would not have a problem if this won. Like, this is really, really well designed. And if you want to have it in a situation where you don't want to show the text, you can easily remove that and just have the top part here as like a favicon or something like that. And while suffering from the really small text, I think this one here is a really unique design. Like, it stands out against everything else here. I don't know whether I like it, because it kind of looks more like a, Office suite rather than a Linux distribution. I like it as a concept, though, and I like that it's here. Now, most of the other logos follow a fairly similar model. For example, this right here is for Leap. And you have the chameleon head ones, you have these ones where it's doing something a bit different. That, I think, is kind of cool, but, I really do like the chameleon head ones. And there's a lot of very similar designs here. Obviously, a lot of people have made suites for everything. But what I also want to show you are the full design packages available, because some people actually made a logo for every single thing available. And some of those have some pretty cool options if you look at the ones outside of what is currently being voted on. The ones I really like are Emiliano, Nicoleon, and Aelyut. I probably completely mispronounced that. So this is the one where they have text under the logo. This, I think all of them work really well. So these ones are very inspired by the logos that already exist, but sort of adapt it into this kind of like sleepy looking chameleon, I guess is a good way to put it. I don't know what the best way to describe it would be. But all of these, I think, would be really, really good options to go with. Here we have the chameleon head one. This, I think, gives you a very consistent design for every single system, and it associates a color with that specific system. So even though the overall framework is similar, it's very easy to see, okay, this is not the OpenSUSE logo. This one right here, for example, is the Tumbleweed logo, or this one here is the Kalpa logo. And Aelyut does it a bit differently. So here, we have a line art chameleon for the main logo. But then all the other logos are very inspired by what is currently being done. I think the MicroOS logo is basically the same thing. These are entirely new designs, and I think work pretty well, actually. So Tumbleweed, you have this single tumble, but then Slow Roll, you have these extra lines as well, sort of indicating that more is going on before it can actually be done. And this one for Kalpa, I think, is really cool, because it's based on MicroOS. It takes elements from the MicroOS logo and turns it into a gear. And Peppermint, I feel like, is a really safe one. Most of these logos are basically the current logo. For example, Leap is just a line art version. This is just the MicroOS logo, and this is Tumbleweed, just a bit more compact. The one thing I'm not a super big fan of is the chameleon. Maybe take the Aelyut one, or possibly the one from Nicoleon. I don't think it's bad, right? Like, I think it's perfectly fine, but I'd prefer one of those other ones. In the end, though, I think there is a lot of really good options, and whatever is decided upon, OpenSUSE is going to have really good new logos, and it's probably going to have a really clear identity about what it is. And then as you make new systems, you can very easily fit something into that current design. But let me know what you guys think. Do you think there's even a point of the logo contest? Instead, maybe just design logos that fit within the current theme. Why make a new one? I would love to know. So if you liked the video, go like the video. Also, let me know your favorites down below as well. Like the video, really like the video, want to become one over these amazing people over here. Check out the Patreon, Scribes, Liberapay, linked in the description down below. That's going to be it for me, and OpenSUSE is very sus.
Like this.